I'm still wrestling with the idea, because I think it very much aligns with Tony Blair and Alistair Campbell, that if you've got Labour voters in your pocket, you don't need to win them over. They're going to vote for you anyway. It's very unlikely they're going to switch sides and vote Tory. So if you want to win an election, you've got to get the Tory voters on side. The trouble is, for people of a certain age, and this would include me, Thatcher is about as divisive a name as you could throw into the ring. You know, she famously took our milk when we were at school, smashed the unions, privatisation we talked about in that interval, no more council houses because the right to buy councils were forbidden for building new houses with the money generated. There was lots of good stuff as well. I mean, she was a passionate believer in the EU, and also secured us a massive EU rebate back in 1984. So there is some good out there for sure from a Labour perspective. But Keir Starmer, whether he win your vote with this article in the Telegraph, I guess that's really what I want to get to. Now, Martin Abrams is a spokesperson for Momentum, who I'd imagine is not necessarily Keir Starmer's preferred wing of the party. And I'm delighted to say Martin joins me now. Good morning, sir.
Matthew, good morning.
Good morning. So what do you make of this article in the Sunday Telegraph?
Well, it's kind of rendered me pretty speechless, to be honest, Matthew, because, in my opinion, no Labour Party leader should be heaping praise on Margaret Thatcher. You know, Margaret Thatcher has left a completely toxic legacy from her tenure as Prime Minister. And let's not forget, she resigned as Prime Minister in 1990, but was still feeling the massive impacts, the devastating impacts from her 11 years as Prime Minister. One thing I would like to raise that you didn't mention previously, Matthew, is one thing that Margaret Thatcher did when she became Prime Minister. She essentially sold off our North Sea oil assets in order to pay for tax cuts for the richest people in the UK, rather than invest the profits from those assets like the Norwegians have done to create something like a sovereign wealth fund. Norway have got a £1.5 trillion sovereign wealth fund, and that equates to about £250,000 for every Norwegian citizen. Margaret Thatcher flogged it off to the highest. Margaret Thatcher flogged our oil off to the highest bidder, and basically gave it away as tax cuts for the richest.
Can I try a slightly disingenuous line here, Martin, which is take everything you've said, but now if you look at the last run of Tory prime ministers, that when you consider Liz Truss's disastrous mini budget, COVID and Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, I think you draw your own conclusions. You might argue that if you look at Tory leaders, that Margaret Thatcher towers above what followed, and therefore Keir Starmer's thinking she was the last winner anybody can remember.
I mean, as a politician, you know, she was clearly quite talented as a politician, but her actual impact on society, Matthew, we are still feeling the effects now. You know, the right to buy scheme you mentioned, she sold off, 4 million council houses have been sold off and not replaced. You know, that's why people are having to now rent privately from slum landlords and like pay £1,500 a month just for a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom
But
damp, mouldy flat.
Martin,
the impacts we're still seeing is absolutely devastating.
If you want to win an election, though, Martin, if you want to win an election, do you have to make these kind of comments? You have to be seen. Does Keir Starmer not? If he wants to win over dissatisfied Tory voters, he's got to show that he's on the same. He's got the same mindset as them to some degree. So I put it to you, it's necessary.
What I would say about that, Matthew, is that if you recall in 2019, Keir Starmer was in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet trying to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister. When we lost that election and Keir Starmer became leader, he then presented 10 what are essentially socialist policies, including public ownership of public services, wealth taxes, a huge sort of programme of socialist policies just to get elected as Labour Party leader, and then basically scrapped them all in the first chance.
All right. Okay.
So what people don't like is shape-shifting politicians that will say something just to get elected. What we need in politics is people that will stand up for everyone in society. We really need to unite as a society and unite around policies that will make people's lives better.
Martin, I've got to talk over you because I want to get another voice in here if I can. That's Martin Abrams, spokesperson for Momentum. I'm going to go straight over to John McTernan now, who was Director of Political Operations for Sir Tony Blair. I think it was during his final 2 years as Prime Minister. He joins me now. Morning, John.
Morning.
I'm thinking that that Tony Blair, he was I think he made some fairly nice comments about Thatcher when she died. I'm not sure I think he was a little bit more circumspect when she was alive. Do you think Sir Keir Starmer has done the right thing today in terms of winning an election?
Yeah, look, for two reasons. The first one is you cannot deny that there have only been a handful of truly transformational prime ministers in Britain since the war.
Yeah.
Attlee, Thatcher, Blair. And you can, if you want, to pick and choose and just say, look, only Labour prime ministers have made Britain better. Margaret Thatcher sorted the two issues that dogged the Wilson government and the Heath government and the Callaghan government, union power and inflation. She did it in a way that I would not have agreed with. It did it in a way that other Labour governments across the world didn't need to do, like in Australia. But she actually changed the country. If you don't accept that she changed the country, you're just in politics to be, as the previous contributor from Momentum was, just to shout at people and to go, I don't like it. And the second reason I think what Keir Starmer did was bold and right. He's basically saying, if you're a Tory voter, still a Tory voter, and look, they're down at 23%, so there's not many people left being Tory voters. Most of them have come to Labour. That's why Labour's got this massive lead, 20-point lead in the polls. But if you're a Tory voter, if either you've come to Labour or you're thinking about coming to Labour, you look at this mob, you look at Sunak, and you look at the 5 prime ministers we've had in 6 years, and you go, are any of them fit to match up against Margaret Thatcher? No. And so partly it's a jibe at the Tory party, which is like, who are you? Who have you got? You're in Division 3 now. You're not playing in the top league. And I think there's that. And I think putting in the Telegraph, Sunday Telegraph, is a desire to wind up the Tories and to get people talking about, well, whatever you say about Margaret Thatcher, she was head and shoulders above.
But it seems to have wound up Labour voters far more than Tory voters, from what I'm gleaning on the message boards here. And I'm just wondering what you think about Abrams' comment that what we're sort of sick of shape-shifting politics, and what we need, I guess, is sort of principled politics. And
what we need is change. We don't. I think. Because look, the thing about Jeremy Corbyn is you could say, and I'm sure Momentum would say, he was a principled politician.
Yeah.
But actually, he's a politician who didn't change his mind from the 1960s to the 2020s. Oh. That's actually a stubbornness, not willing to adapt to the realities. Keir wants to offer change. And I think what he's saying is there is a line of prime ministers in the UK's history who've been changed prime ministers: Blair, Thatcher, Attlee, and there are a whole load of prime ministers who've been utter failures, and we've just had 5 of them.
I'm going to doff my hat to you here, John, because I think you made a really strong case there. The comparison with Corbyn, which, I always assumed he was a man of principle, and I also take your point that it is a principle that remained unchanged for decades, and that perhaps your principles end up out of kilter with what is required in the present time. So I'm persuaded by what John McTernan has just said there. Are you? So what we're discussing is whether Sir Keir Starmer was right to pen this article. It doesn't eulogise Thatcher, but it does give a nod to Thatcher. It also mentions that he's quite strong on stopping the boat still, and wants to feel that these subjects are not off limits for Labour people to talk about. But I think at the heart of it all is the discussion we've just had about principles and shape-shifting politics versus the need to change in order to govern well.